영어 동화 세상 리틀팍스.
Superstars in History. Steve Jobs. Welcome to my new smash hit, Superstars in History. I'm your host, Faye Moss, the only talk show host in the world with access to history's biggest stars. Each week, I interview people from the past who've changed history in unique ways. They love sharing their personal stories with me. Oh, and with you, too! You're going to be absolutely fascinated by my conversation with today's guest. He started a famous company, dramatically left it, and made a huge comeback later on. He's a computer pioneer who changed the world again and again. Straight from history, here's the founder of Apple, Steve Jobs.
Hello, Faye.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for being my guest on Superstars in History. Kids today will never know a world without smartphones or tablets. I certainly don't know what I'd do without all my smartphones and tablets. But you didn't have these devices when you were a kid. Tell me, what was your childhood like?
Well, I had a pretty normal childhood. I was born in 1955 and grew up in California, in a place that would become known as Silicon Valley. I hung out a lot with my dad, who loved working with his hands, building things, and fixing cars. He wasn't great with electronics, but he knew the basics from working on cars and taught me.
Did your dad teach you any secrets that helped you succeed?
I don't know if they were secrets, Faye, but my dad thought craftsmanship was really important. Whenever he built something, like a fence or a cabinet, he paid close attention to parts that wouldn't even be seen, like their backs. Later at Apple, I paid close attention to the design of each product too, making sure that everything looked sleek and was truly well made.
I've heard that you had a wide range of interests in school. Literature, philosophy, and music. How did you become interested in technology?
Even in the 1960s, Silicon Valley was a big technology center. The Hewlett-Packard Company was already there making electronic devices. Plus, I went to school with kids whose parents were engineers, and my friends were really into electronics. Do you know Steve Wozniak, who...
Of course, I know Woz. He was your co-founder at Apple, right?
Yes, but that came later. Woz was already a genius when it came to electronics, and the two of us liked playing pranks. Once, Woz made a device that interrupted TV signals, which used to frustrate people so much. Eventually, we figured out how to make a blue box, too. This tricked phone lines into making expensive, long-distance calls for free. Illegally.
Those devices sound pretty complicated. How old were you at the time?
I was in my senior year of high school. After high school, I tried going to college, but dropped out after a semester. I didn't like taking the required courses. Eventually, I moved back home and got a job at a video game company. I also joined a club with Woz for computer hobbyists. By now, Woz had designed his own computer, and I realized it could sell really well. This machine became the Apple I, and in 1976, we founded the Apple Computer Company in my parents' garage. We made 200 Apple I computers and sold most of them within 10 months.
What was special about the Apple I? I mean, it doesn't look anything like a computer. Where's the monitor?
Actually, no computers at the time had monitors, as you know them today. With our Apple I, we just sold the computer, and people could use their own TVs for monitors. Soon, Woz started working on the Apple II. The Apple II was one of the first home computers, and when we started selling it, our company took off. In the early 80s, I developed the Macintosh, a great new computer that showed pictures on screen and used a mouse. This technology was all pretty new at the time.
I bet it was a huge success.
It wasn't a failure, but it wasn't the success we had hoped for. By then, other computers were available, and Apple lost its share of the market to competitors. The board of directors had grown unhappy with my performance as well. I left Apple and started another company called Next.
Wow! How did it feel to leave Apple, a company that you founded? You must have felt angry and betrayed.
I was upset, but later realized that I benefited from the change. I was young when Apple started, and I became rich and famous quickly. Too quickly. At Next, I was able to start over, learn new lessons, and make new mistakes. Meanwhile, the Next computers were too expensive, but the technology was exciting, and we were developing software that Apple wanted. So Apple bought Next, and soon I was back at Apple.
Apple wasn't very profitable when you returned in 1997. In fact, many people were expecting it to shut down. But it grew into one of the most successful companies in the world. How did you ever turn things around?
When I went back to Apple, the company was working on a lot of different projects. There wasn't much focus or vision. I decided we should work on a few core projects that we could do well. In 1997, only 37% of households in the US had a computer. There was also a new technology called the Internet. How could we make both computers and the Internet easier for people to use? In 1998, we released our answer to that question, the iMac. It was an all-in-one computer, ready to use almost right out of the box. And it had a friendly design that made technology less scary for many people. Within 5 months, we sold 800,000 of them, and 32% of those buyers were purchasing a computer for the first time.
Obviously, your early work at Apple was ahead of its time. But by the 2000s, you were in the right place at the right time, producing innovative new products. And now, people like me can't imagine life without them. Thank you for being here, Steve. We'll let you get back to history now.
Goodbye.
And thank you, everyone, for watching my exclusive interview with Steve Jobs. As you might know, the last major product he launched at Apple was the iPad in 2010. He had cancer at the time, but he kept on working. Finally, he became too ill to work and resigned from his day-to-day duties in 2011. Sadly, Steve Jobs died on October 5th of that year. He was only 56 years old, but he certainly made a huge impact on technology, as well as our everyday lives. That's all for today, but I'll be back soon with another exciting interview. You've been watching Famous, the talk show host with exclusive access to history's biggest stars. Superstars in history. Diana, Princess of Wales. Hello, everyone. Famous here with another episode of Superstars in History, where I interview the legends of the past. In the 1980s and 1990s, today's guest was the most photographed, most famous woman in the world. She modernized the British royal family with her sense of style, concern for everyone, and efforts to introduce her children to the real world. Please give a warm welcome to Diana, Princess of Wales.
Hello, Faye. I understand your grandmother is sick. How's she doing? And how are you?
She's getting better, thanks. That's so kind of you to ask. Then again, you were known for your kindness even as a child. You were born in 1961 and came to public attention later as Lady Diana Spencer. Tell us about your family.
The Spencers are one of the oldest, most distinguished families in Great Britain. The family has been friends with the royal family for generations. In fact, I grew up on one of the royal family's properties in the countryside.
That must have been a beautiful place to live.
It was, but unfortunately my parents' marriage was troubled. They divorced when I was 7, and that trauma shaped my whole life. After a bitter legal battle, my father was granted custody of my 2 older sisters, my younger brother, and me.
Did you feel different from your friends because your parents were divorced?
Oh, yes. Hardly anyone got divorced back then. But there was one positive result. I could always sympathize with people who had family problems. When I was 13, there was more upheaval because my grandfather died, and my father became Earl Spencer. We moved 2 hours away from my friends to live at our family's ancestral home. Things got worse when my father married someone we all hated.
That's a lot to deal with. Can you tell us some of your happier memories?
Loved to swim and dive. Loved tap dancing and ballet. My dream was to become a ballerina, but I grew too tall.
What did you do after leaving school?
I moved to London and worked as an assistant teacher at a nursery school and a babysitter. I also cleaned house for my oldest sister, Sarah, and her friends.
You were a cleaner before you married a prince? That sounds like something from a fairy tale. And the Prince of Wales is heir to the British throne, so you'd eventually be queen. What was it like to date Prince Charles?
The British press was always interested in Charles's girlfriends, especially since he was 32, and everyone thought it was time for him to marry. They went into a frenzy when we started dating. Every day, dozens of reporters and photographers waited outside my flat and chased my car.
The tabloids called you Shy Di because you ducked your head whenever they tried to photograph you. You were so young and pretty, and everyone loved that you were shy.
I wasn't shy. I was terrified. I was only 19, but the paparazzi wouldn't leave me alone. I had no choice but to cope if I wanted the prince to marry me, and I wanted that very much. As king, Charles would be the head of the Church of England. I naively thought this meant he couldn't get divorced, so my children would never suffer as I had. We'd live happily ever after.
More than 750 million people around the world watched your fairy tale wedding on TV in 1981. Did you hope the press would stop hounding you after that?
Of course, but the wedding only increased interest in everything about me.
Well, you were very stylish. The rest of the royal family looked rather, old-fashioned, but you were a British fashion icon.
Yes, but I wanted to be known for more than my clothes. Charles, as heir, had a clearly defined role, but there wasn't one for me. On our official visits, I gradually realized that I could help people, the sick, the dying, the abused, just by being there. People were starving for love, and that was something I could give.
Right. Before you, the royal family was a lot more distant from people, and many people credit you for updating its image.
I believed the monarchy needed to be relevant to modern people's lives, so I became involved in causes that the royal family had mostly avoided. I was honored to be asked to open the first British hospital ward for HIV/AIDS patients. There was such a huge stigma attached to the disease then that I made international headlines just by shaking hands with a patient.
You made a big impact, and your fame helped you do it. But being in the spotlight wasn't easy for you.
Sadly, my marriage wasn't very happy since my husband was in love with someone else. I grew depressed and struggled with an eating disorder, which went on for years until a friend persuaded me to seek help. My own experiences gave me great compassion for those with mental illness.
I can't believe we haven't talked about your children yet. They were so important to you.
My boys. William was born in 1982, and Harry 2 years later. I wanted them to lead normal lives if possible. Unlike my husband, they attended school with other children right from the start, and we went to movies and amusement parks.
You took them to hospitals, hospices, and homeless shelters. Was that decision influenced by your own work?
Yes, it was especially important for William to see how real people live, since he was in the line of succession. As for me, I eventually grew tired of the glamorous parts of being Princess of Wales and focused on my charitable work. I had no desire to be queen.
Thank you for this refreshingly candid interview. We'll let you get back to history now.
Thank you, Faye.
Princess Diana's marriage ended in divorce in 1996, but she stayed in the public eye, raising awareness of the problem of landmines. The next year, she died in a car accident that occurred while her driver was trying to elude the paparazzi. The world went into mourning, and huge crowds lined London's streets for her funeral while millions watched on TV. Now adults with families of their own, Diana's sons continue her legacy of caring and concern for others. That's all for now on Superstars in History. I'm Famous! Superstars in History. King Sejong the Great. Hello! Welcome to Superstars in History. I'm your host, Famous, and you're in for a royal treat today. Another exclusive interview with a famous person from the past. Today's guest was a caring king who worked hard to improve life in his kingdom. In fact, he was so devoted to his people, he invented a brand new alphabet for them. Straight from history, here is His Majesty, King Sejong the Great.
It pleases me to be here, Faye.
The honor is all mine, Your Majesty. I'm so excited to interview the most beloved king from the Joseon dynasty of Korea. But I have to say, the surprising thing is that you became a king at all, since you were the third son of your father, King Sejong. How did you end up on the throne?
As a child, I was studious and serious, and my father looked kindly upon this. Meanwhile, my oldest brother, Prince Yangyang, who was the heir to the throne, was carefree and lacked the temperament required of a king. In 1418, the court officials were so exasperated by his behavior, they appealed to my father, saying the prince was unfit to rule. At the urging of these officials, my father stripped Prince Yangyang of the title crown prince and named me the heir instead. 2 months later, my father abdicated, and the throne passed to me.
You were only 21 when you became king. That must have been a huge responsibility.
It was, and it happened very suddenly. I did not feel ready to become king, but my father gave me no choice. After his abdication, he stayed involved in state affairs and daily governance for a few years to make the transition smooth. In 1422, he fell ill and died, and from then on, I ruled alone.
Can you tell us about some of your accomplishments as king?
Certainly, Faye. I'm sure you want to know about my alphabet, but even before I invented it, I had a deep interest in learning. As a child, I loved to read and often read all through the night. To promote learning, I established the Hall of Worthies early in my reign. This was a group of scholars whom I chose to advise me on policy and research ways to improve the lives of my people. I recruited scholars from all backgrounds since their abilities were more important to me than their social class.
Your reign saw advances in science and technology, a lot like the Renaissance.
I do not know what the Renaissance is, young lady, but you are correct. I believed that science and technology would help to strengthen our nation. A talented inventor named Jang Yong-shil invented a great many things at my request. He built water clocks, astrolabes, and sundials. He also made a rain gauge and a water gauge that allowed us to better manage our water supply. And he improved the metal printing press so that books could be printed even faster.
Now that you've mentioned books, let's move on to your alphabet. Hangul!
Hangul? No. The name for my writing system is Hunminjeongum, which means correct sounds for the instruction of people. Back in my time, our language had no writing system of its own. We wrote with Chinese characters. But Chinese characters did not represent our speech accurately, because our language was very different from Chinese. And learning Chinese characters was challenging. Only elite men had time for this kind of study. I was saddened by the fact that so many of my subjects were trapped in illiteracy, with few opportunities to acquire new knowledge. With some help from my children, I invented a new writing system that would be easy for everyone to learn. My creation was released to the public in 1446.
Your alphabet is unique among the world's writing systems. The shapes of the letters come from the sounds they make.
You are a very bright young lady. You would make an excellent addition to the Hall of Worthies. Indeed, the shape of each consonant is inspired by the shape or position of the speech organs when making its sound. For example, Nian, the consonant for N, is shaped like the tongue when making a N sound. And Miam, which is for M, is meant to look like the lips when making a M sound.
I bet everyone was thrilled to have such an easy-to-learn alphabet.
Hardly. Many nobles and elites at court enjoyed the power of being literate, while the common people were not. So my invention was met with much opposition. I tirelessly promoted the alphabet, but I'm sorry to report it was slow to spread. Literacy was only one of the areas where I tried to improve the lives of my people. I made the tax system fairer for the common people. I had a textbook on farming published to help farmers succeed in producing food for the kingdom. I even enacted laws to give government slave women maternity leave and their husbands paternity leave.
It sounds like you were really ahead of your time. Some people think it's easy to be a king, but you worked really hard.
It was a very hard job, and not a healthy one. As king, I was constantly reading documents, often in poor lighting, which weakened my eyesight. I was served delicious, rich food, but had little opportunity for exercise. Needless to say, I wasn't always in the best of health. But as king, I felt a duty to my people, and I'm proud to have improved their lives where I could.
With all that you accomplished, no one can accuse you of slacking off on the job. Thank you for sharing your story with us, Your Majesty. We'll let you get back to history now.
Goodbye.
King Sejong spent the last third of his life suffering from blindness and diabetes, and his son and heir, Prince Munjong, ruled as regent for him. King Sejong died in 1450 after 32 years on the throne. His reign is remembered for its advances in science, technology, and literacy. In fact, October 9th is a national holiday in Korea, Hangul Day, celebrating the day that Hunminjeongum was published. And King Sejong's alphabet is still so admired that one of UNESCO's International Literacy Prizes is named after him. I hope you enjoyed today's guest. Be sure to tune in again next time for another blast from the past on Superstars in History.